Well, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Bridges Conversations. My name is Steve Gibbons. I'm the executive director of the Bridges Foundation in St. Louis, Missouri. We are an organization that provides the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius Loyola in everyday life and have been doing so for coming up on 40 years. So we do these conversations to have the chance to chat with some of our favorite people. And one of our favorite people is on the line with us today. We're talking today with Atwell Ackels. She is the director of the Ignatian Spirituality Institute in Dallas. And today we're going to be talking about this summer's Ignatian Spirituality Conference sponsored by the Institute. It will be hosted July 24th through 27th in Dallas. And it's called Hope, Living Between Faith and Love. Carol is the spiritual director in the Ignatian tradition. She serves as a retreat director of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius in various formats. She offers weekend retreats, including being a frequent guest at the White House Retreat Center here in St. Louis. She gives one-to-one directed retreats at Jesuit retreat houses across the country. She launched and continues to give workshops to help shape people, Jesuits and lay, who are moving into retreat ministry and spiritual companioning in the Ignatian tradition. She is a friend and a co-author with our friend, Father Joe Tetlow, of the book, The 12-Week Ignatian Retreat, called Finding Christ in the World. So that's a lot, and we're going to unpack some of that and talk about this conference. But Carol, welcome back to Bridges Conversations.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me. It's always a delight to have conversation with good friends like you.
Thank you. Well, let's start as we kind of always do. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, your career, and kind of your journey to Ignatian spirituality? How did that all come about?
Oh, gosh, where to start? Well, as we were just chatting about, I grew up in a small town here near just south of Dallas. And initially on a farm, and then in the little town is where I grew up. I was not Catholic. My family's a Methodist, but later in life, I went to a Catholic high school, and that's when my entrance into the church began. And then after I entered the church and entered the Catholic church and married my husband, and we began our family, I started making retreats at Montserrat Jesuit Retreat House, which is here locally in the Dallas area. And I discovered that this had always been my spirituality, even before I was just all my life. My spirituality has been Ignatian. I didn't know the name of it. I didn't know it was, but
you're talking my language. We realize our paths overlap so much, but go right ahead.
And so I just felt ever more deeply invited into living the spirituality and learning the spirituality. And then Father Joe Tetlow came to town at Montserrat, and that's when really the gas pedal got pushed pretty rapidly. I don't to this day really know what he saw, but he continued to invite me, and we became good friends and worked together for a number of years and remain very good friends. And so that's kind of been my journey from, it was Joe who invited me, informed me, and shaped me as an Ignatian spiritual director. And I began giving the exercises, and he invited me to give preached retreats. And then after he left the Dallas area, we continued to work together. And that was when the Ignatian Spirituality Institute was conceived and born, and given the blessing of Father Provincial at the time, Father Provincial Mark Lewis. And so we kind of launched with an idea, and it's taken us to the Holy Spirit is always unwieldy. So it's taken us to interesting places and fruitful places, and we're grateful for the opportunities that we've had doing the workshops, giving retreats, offering conferences, and living and learning day by day. So it's been a great
And
experience.
those conferences, especially, I had the benefit of attending one down in Dallas at Montserrat with you and Father Joe about giving preach retreats, and you're both masterful storytellers, which I think always helps these exercises come alive when you can, hear real stories from real people. And we could talk a whole day about that, but
Yes, we did. Good.
but today we are going to talk a little bit about this conference you have coming up this summer. And when we were talking about that, one of the first things you said is, well, the first thing you need to know is it's more than a conference. So can you talk a little bit about what this is and what you're hoping for it to be for the people who attend?
Yeah, I really, my hope, I've always thought, what else could we call it besides a conference? Because I think we all kind of have these images of conferences as you go, you attend, there's a lot of information that's, imparted, and you go home and decide what you're going to. And so this is not that. And so I think probably the most helpful way to think about it is that it's spiritual conversation. Our methodology is to have conversation, spiritual conversation, which is really always the way of Ignatian spirituality from the beginning. It was Ignatius who began with having spiritual conversations, and spiritual conversations are at the heart of everything Ignatian in our spirituality. And so what we do is create a format. There is input from, and we are very blessed to have incredible presenters, especially with Father James Hanby. And so there is input, but there's also time for reflection. And then we move into small groups to really have these conversations. And then we come back with the presenters and have conversation with the presenters as well, and see what they're hearing. So there's a lot of listening, and there's lots of opportunity to meet new people of like mind and like heart. And so it's quite rich, actually. And at our previous conference, we just had so many people say, this is what we need to be doing. This is what's life-giving. So it really is more than an informational conference. It's a conference where we have conversation and really process together as an Ignatian community where we find ourselves, and where we find ourselves invited as to next steps. So,
help us unpack a little bit this. The title is Hope, Living Between Faith and Love. Unpack that phrase for us a little bit. How does hope put us between faith and love, and how are those all connected, do you think?
I think the shortest answer I could offer for that is that hope, the virtue of hope, and hope provides meaning and orientation. Hope is not just optimistic thinking. It goes beyond. It goes beyond where we are. We look seriously at where we are and the challenges we face. But hope is a seeking, and it takes us beyond. So it's an orientation for our life of faith. It's an orientation for our love, how we love, the way we love, um, the way we live out the love that God is loving through us and in us. So, hope is a searching movement, and I think that um, it is that notion of we hold we hold tensions and polarities in our life, and hope is what binds us. I think.
Yeah. I know there's a few people watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the comments right there in Facebook, and we'll get to them a little bit later. Um, but let's talk a little bit about the timing of this. So, why is this spiritual conversation around the topic of hope and faith and love so important right now in the history of the world? You mentioned in a previous conversation this idea that we are living in a change of era as opposed to an era of, or no, the other way around, right? Well, talk about the difference between a change of era and an era of change,
Right.
and why the timing is so good right now for this.
Well, that's from Pope Francis, actually. Pope Francis says that we are living in a change of era versus an era of change. I think we've been living in an era of change, but where we are now is a change of era. And hope is Pope Francis says that hope is a virtue that gives an inward direction and a purpose to our life. And so, in this era of change of era, of course, we're experiencing. All of us are experiencing quite a bit of transition, and there's no small amount of fear, and and so it's hope that responds again. It finds us where we are and takes us beyond. It helps us seek the new, and it goes beyond. It sets us on a path, on an orientation towards the new, and um, and we don't have to be fearful. We don't have to be. It's an invitation to be bold and to be imaginative and creative. So I think the timing is important right now. We're all very aware of the polarization in our culture, which includes our work and our church and our politics and our families. And hope invites us to begin. We don't deny those realities.
Hmm.
Um, hope invites us to begin where we are. And the interesting thing about hope, as opposed to fear, for example, and more akin to faith, hope doesn't isolate people.
Hmm.
It gathers us. Our faith does the same. Our faith gathers us together, um, and it doesn't isolate us. And we are very aware that we're living in a time, at least in the United States, of polarization, which is isolating. And so that's why I think the timing is so important. Um, we're not going to ignore, like I said, it's not just optimistic thinking. We're not ignoring the reality of where we are, but we're speaking into it, or hope to speak into it, or hope to find our way. How do we listen to this? And what are our invitations to respond? where's God in all this?
Yeah.
Because God is laboring and God's love is at work. So
In the
that's
middle of the mess,
in
basically.
the
We
middle of
talked
the
about
mess.
this. Yeah.
Exactly. That in this, and again, Pope Francis also spoke to and wrote, I don't have a direct quote, but the notion that the answer is in the mess. The answer is in the crisis. And so we have to step into it and look at it and be unafraid. And so and it's hope that gives us that orientation and that courage and that boldness to do that.
Can you talk a little bit for those of us and many who would be listening to this now or in the future, or people who have been through the spiritual exercises? Um, how does this idea of finding God in the mess and of living in hope, how does this tie directly to the spiritual exercises, uh, to which of the exercises within the exercise, which of the contemplations and meditations, where do you find what you're talking about here?
I think for me, I mean, there's many places, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could start with the first week and looking at the mystery of sin. I mean,
Right.
there or looking at the second week and coming to know Jesus better and loving him more, watching how he interacts with people and how did he deal with the polarity of his time and those things. So it's there, right? It's everywhere. I think for me, um, I think what's particularly addresses is first of all the two standards.
Mm.
Um,
So
Ignatius was
where do you stand in the middle of this mess, right?
right. Well,
Yeah.
Ignatius was a soldier, and so he had not only he wasn't only aware, he had experience of basically hand to hand battle, and when you're in that kind of battle, there can be all kinds of confusion, like where's my side, kind of
Mm.
when you're really in that battle, and that's really the foundational root of the two standards. He uses that notion of on a military field there were literally flags, really literally what they called standards, and you could look up and see, well, which way is my side going?
Mm-hmm.
And that's literally the foundational root of the two standards. Um, so I think that's why it feels really applicable to our day and time, because we're in this mess. We're in and can feel very confused. And so to look up and find our standard, and our standard, of course, is Christ the King. So to me, the kingdom exercise is also appropriate and or informative to our day and time. Who is the King? We How does our King behave? The King that lives with us, the King that is kind,
Mm-hmm.
the King that is humble, the King that loves us and leads us. So to me, those are the two. In terms of this, if I'm thinking in terms of the spiritual exercises, but of course, really all of it. I can also move to the contemplatio, where God is always laboring,
Mm.
and what God is laboring to do is to give Himself to us. And how are we responding? And how are we receiving? So
Mm. Yeah.
that's the way I think of it. If I'm thinking in terms of meditations and contemplations, I do think that in our day and time, the two standards looms large.
Mm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
kingdom.
Yeah.
We're in the kingdom of now and not yet. So as Joe always often says.
Mm. Um, we got 5 5 or 6 minutes left, maybe. Can we talk a little bit? Let's go back to the conference and maybe talk about some of the nuts and bolts of this.
Okay.
Who is this conference for? And who's involved in giving it? And what should people? You talked a little bit about how it's going to be formatted, but who's it for? Who's going to be speaking? And what should people expect?
Well, who's it for? Very broadly stated, it's for really anyone who, certainly for anyone who lives Ignatian spirituality. It's certainly for spiritual directors in the Ignatian tradition, anyone who's giving the exercises, anyone who has an interest to live out of the exercises. But it's not only for specialists either. It's for
Right, right.
Is your heart leading you into this heart set and mindset of Ignatian spirituality? So in that way, you could think of it as concentric circles or whatever, but it's to bring together. The invitation is to the Ignatian family and to those who'd like to be a member of the Ignatian family.
Right,
Might be the most simple way to think of it.
right. And people who are, even if they don't have that background, but they're looking for a way of finding that hope in the middle of this mess, are they gonna feel
Yeah,
at home at this
I
conference, you
think
think?
so. I'm thinking back to our previous conference, and we had people that had long lives in the Ignatian tradition, and then we had people that were just kind of interested, like,
Mm,
and um, and the conversations. What I think back to is how rich the conversations were, and how rich it was for what the people that were new to it, the gift that they brought to the conference,
mm,
because it helped us look anew. It wasn't, we weren't just using the same old language or
mhm,
and it was such a gift to have people who their questions were so rich and insightful. So that's why we really encourage, um, if you have just the slightest interest in Ignatian spirituality, you would be very welcomed, um, because you bring your own gifts.
mm,
The invitation is to bring your gifts to the table and let's talk. So, yeah, that's who this for.
right,
Our conversations are guided by, or the reflections are primarily Father James Hanvey. Father James Hanvey is many things.
mm,
Um, he is the secretary in service of the faith at the Curia of the Society of Jesus in Rome. He's a widely known theologian. He is a theologian for Pope Francis. He served on the Theological Commission for the Synod on synodality, and is that. Um, so obviously, he's a brilliant man and incredible theologian. He writes. He hasn't really written books, but that I'm aware of, but he writes articles that are very accessible. What I really love about James is that he's very, very humble and he's very accessible,
mm,
and he's interested in hearing. He's interested in listening. Um, in fact, this conference is going to begin by us asking those that participate, by us listening, by James listening. He goes, I want to hear, why have people come and what are they hoping for? And that's how we're going to begin the conference, is him listening,
mm,
or all of us really listening to one another. So he's our main presenter. We also have Father Mike Graham. Mike is previous. He was president of Xavier University in Cincinnati for 22 years, I believe. And now he's retired from that, and he serves as a delegate with the U.S. Assistancy, the Society of Jesus, in higher education. He does formation, board members and people in ministry like myself, or like others that would be in attending. And he also is a spiritual director and gives retreats, a lot of preached retreats. If you ever have an opportunity, in fact, he just recently came to White House to give a preached retreat.
Hmm.
If you have an opportunity to hear Mike Graham give a preached retreat, take it. So he's a delightful, delightful guy, also very humble and fun. James is also very fun. And so he'll be one of our presenters as well, serving on the panel. And then we'll have opportunity that each of the presenters will be speaking in a small group setting.
Great.
And then our other
Go ahead.
panelist is Anthony Burrell. Anthony was previously director at Montserrat Jesuit Retreat House. He's now with Jesuit Refugee Services in Rome. And so it has a worldwide perspective on Jesuit refugees service, and just kind of one of those people that has his finger on a heartbeat in the world. And so we're really delighted for Anthony to join us as a panelist as well. So that's who's going to be there. And I just to have the opportunity to meet James and Anthony and Mike is worth the cost of admission.
And you, I'm gonna add and Carol Ackels, but yes, okay.
And so I am serving as well as a panelist, but only because they insisted. I will be deferring to them quite a lot. So.
What else can you tell us about the conference? Any other details? We got it up on the screen here.
It's July 24th, 27th, as you have up on the. It's held at a lovely Marriott DFW Westlake Hotel. It's a small. We'll probably have pretty much the run of the hotel. It's kind of set in a wooded area, and it's where our conference was before. It was very lovely. We will be providing some meals, not all meals, but we'll be providing lunches and at least one dinner. And the hotel does have a free shuttle from DFW Airport to and from the hotel. Yeah, I mean, we're very pleased with the place, and we're delighted to feel invited to host this again. It's a unique experience, and we're all still learning about it. I do remember at the end of, as I mentioned earlier, so many of the attendees and participants said, this is what we need to be doing, is having these conversations. And I was very moved because James Hamby attends conferences all over the world. And when he left, he said, this is what we need to be doing. And this is one of the rare places that's doing it. So I was very moved and encouraged by his comment and his sense that the Holy Spirit's really at work in what we're attempting to do. So we'd love to see you all there.
We can wring our hands or curl up in a ball, or we can get together and talk about it, right? It's one of those things we can do.
That's right. And really locate those places of hope. Where is the Holy Spirit inviting us? Because we are being invited.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit is, I mean, I guess in Ignatian terms, we might think about, well, the bad spirit's really at work. Yes. But anytime the bad spirit's at work, so is the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
The good spirit is also always at work. So how do we get into that mindset and move forward with the next good thing to do? So, yeah.
We're going to wrap things up here. in a minute. Let me see if this is a question or just a comment. This is from one of our current year retreatants, actually. Say, this is what Christian hope is, Frank says. Having the certainty that I am walking towards something that is, not something that I hope may be. This is Christian hope. Christian hope is the expectation of something that has already been fulfilled, and that will certainly be fulfilled for each one of us. That's Pope Francis, he says, citing letters to the Romans and the Corinthians. So thank you, Frank, for that bit of insight. Yeah. If you have any other, I'm going to make a little announcement here. If you have any final comments or questions, please put them up in the comments, and we'll tackle them real quick. I did want to mention that we'll be here again in May, on Thursday, May 1st. Will be our next Bridges Conversations. We're going to be here with Lisa Kelly. She is the co-director of the La Storta Institute in Nebraska, and she's also the author of a really interesting new book I've been reading called The Spiritual Path, Embarking on the Journey of a Lifetime. So we're going to be talking about that in May with Lisa. Let's see, we got one more comment coming up here, maybe. Come on here. This is my friend Dan Mose. Any fear I witness is turning to anger, losing hope. Two standards, time to take sides. Is there a question here? I can't think. How does Ignatian Spirituality take a stand for the standard of good right now? Can you, Sasa, maybe a comment out of that?
I think we want to look at who we're standing next to. First of all, Jesus.
Right.
Where's Jesus standing? That's where Ignatius would always point us to be, is standing next to Jesus and standing with those with whom Jesus would be standing and is standing, not would be, but is standing. So,
yeah, so it's not so much where does Ignatian Spirituality stand as much as where are we standing? And as you said, who are we standing next to?
Who are we standing? Who are we standing with? Who's with us? And of course, that's Jesus, but also the other good people. I mean, the other people that are doing the hard work, carrying the heavy crosses. So,
thank you for that.
I don't know if that provides an answer.
I think it does, and I think, yeah. All right. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. Would encourage you all to check out. It's ignatianinstitute.org is the website, and from there you can easily find a page about the upcoming conference this summer. So please check that out. And
thank you so much, Steve, for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Carol.
I'm so grateful for the work of Bridges and all the work you do, and so I look forward to seeing you when I'm in St. Louis.
I know we need to have you back here sometime. So,
God bless and thank you very much for having us. And I hope to see you at the conference. Those of you that can come, would love to see you.
All right. Hold on for just a minute. We're going to end this, and then we'll see you all next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.